The scripture for today is Exodus 14:19 through 31. Who has been in front of Israel's camp, moved and went behind them? The column of cloud moved from the front and took its place behind them. It stood between Egypt's camp and Israel's camp. The cloud remained there, and when darkness fell, it lit up the night. They didn't come near each other all night. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. The Lord pushed the sea back by a strong east wind all night, turning the sea into dry land. The waters were split in two. The Israelites walked into the sea on dry ground. The waters formed a wall for them on their right hand and on their left. The Egyptians chased them and went into the sea after them, all of Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and cavalry. As morning approached, the Lord looked down on the Egyptian camp from the column of lightning and cloud and threw the Egyptian camp into a panic. The Lord jammed their chariot wheels so they wouldn't turn easily. The Egyptians said, "Let's get away from the Israelites because the Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the water comes back and covers the Egyptians, their chariots, and their cavalry." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. At daybreak, the sea returned to its normal depth. The Egyptians were driving toward it, and the Lord tossed the Egyptians into the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the cavalry. Pharaoh's entire army that had followed them into the sea. Not one of them remained. The Israelites, however, walked on dry ground through the sea. The water formed a wall on them. They're on their right hand and on their left. The Lord rescued Israel from the Egyptians that day. Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel saw the amazing power of the Lord against the Egyptians. The people were in awe of the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses.
And would you pray with me, please? Oh, gracious God, we ask that as we hear the word proclaimed, that we might find your holy presence within it, and that we might be moved by the words that you have to say to us today. So today we are going to continue our series on the road with Moses, and so far we looked at Moses' birth, and we've looked at the burning bush. Today, we're going to look at the Red Sea. However, as we journey with the Israelites to the Promised Land, I want us to be really clear that these are not merely stories about Moses, but about Moses' relationship with God as it relates to God's deliverance of Israel and God's redemptive history. Conversely, today's story is a story about Israel coming to know the glory and the power of God. It is about them beginning to realize and understand who God is in their midst. And so we know this story after God heard the cries of the Israelites and saw their oppression, God called Moses and he told Moses, I want you to go to Egypt. And Moses said, I'm not going to do that. But he finally answers that call, and he does go. Even after he offered excuse after excuse as why he could not go back and face Pharaoh. How many of us have ever offered God excuses as to why we can't do something? Now, granted, for Moses to go back to Pharaoh, that's a pretty risky thing. I mean, Pharaoh wanted to kill him. But he does go. And he goes as God commands, and he gets back there, and he goes to Pharaoh, and he says, you know what? Let my people go. To which Pharaoh says, who is this Lord that you say I am to obey? I don't know this Lord, and I'm certainly not going to let Israel go. So Pharaoh's refusal to let the Israelites go then results in God sending 10 pretty horrible kind of ugly plagues upon Pharaoh's land, which eventually he says, you know what, just get up, get out of here, get away from my people, get out of here and go and take those Israelites with you. So then after some 400 years, finally, the Israelites are journeying out of slavery and toward the promised land that God has promised them. And God promised them, he says, in front of you during the day, a column of a cloud is going to guide you. And at night, there's going to be a column of fire that will give you light. My presence is going to be with you every step of your journey. So as we get into chapter 14, we find that the Israelites, they're now camped along the Red Sea, essentially with nowhere to go. So they are having one of those kind of what now kind of moments. Have you ever been in a place where you're looking around and it's like, okay, so what do I do now? Because, well, I don't know that going back's a really great idea. And I don't see a way forward at this moment. And so are we just kind of stuck? It's that kind of moment when at the same time, all of a sudden, Pharaoh sees them, and he sees that they're not going anywhere. And so he decides, well, you know what? They're just lost, and they're confused, and they're trapped. I've got them. So in a kind of one of those moments where Pharaoh's thinking, what was I thinking in letting them go? I'm the big guy. He changes his mind. He collects his army and decides, I'm going after them. And that is where the troubled waters begin. Because the Israelites are now stuck at the Red Sea, and they look back at Egypt, and they see Pharaoh's armies marching toward them, and they're terrified. And who wouldn't be? I mean, where do you go when there's a sea right in front of you, and an army ready to destroy you coming up behind you? It's not like they have a boat. And it's not like they have time to build a boat. And they don't even have a blow-up canoe like the one sitting in my garage. They couldn't go forward, and they couldn't go backward. And so what do? They do what many of us do when we get stuck. They blame someone. Often the one in charge, but sometimes they blame someone else. But don't we kind of do that too? We get stuck somewhere with something and, I don't know, maybe it's, purchasing a new vehicle or whatever, and, well, things didn't turn out with that new vehicle like we intended, and we say, well, it's the dealership's fault, or it's so-and-so's fault. If somebody would have just done what I said. In their case, they look at Moses and they say, you know what, weren't there enough graves in Egypt that you took us away to die in this desert? If we were going to die there, why did you take us to die somewhere else? What have you done to us bringing us out of Egypt like this? Didn't we tell you the same thing in Egypt? Leave us alone? Let us work for the Egyptians. It would have been better for us to work for the Egyptians than to die in the desert. And there it is. When times get tough, all too often we think the past is better than the future. And we look back and we say, well, you know, way back then, or, 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or however long, we look back and we say, well, that's better than what we got now. That's better than not being able to know what's ahead or how to get ahead or where to go. It was so much better back then. I don't know, any of you ever been to high school? Any of you want to go back? Yeah, I didn't think so. But we do that. We look back and we say, well, it was so much better then. And so, like the Israelites, when we're stuck and the future is uncertain, or the one we once dared to dream about seems unattainable, well, we go backwards because, well, it's familiar territory. We know how to act, behave, and what to do there. We have some reasonable expectation, as bad as it might be, how people are going to treat us. We know the rules. We know how to function in that environment. But when you're standing in front of the Red Sea with nowhere to go, all you can see is water and no way to get to the other side, and it feels hopeless. Sometimes you're standing at a crossroads somewhere, and you can't see the days ahead. You can't see the future ahead. And because we can't envision that future or see what's before us, we start thinking, it might be better just to turn around and go back. Any of you ever said, I should have never started this vacation? You get on this journey and you got all these hopes about what it's going to be like. And I can remember going on a vacation to Kentucky with our kids one time, and I thought it was going to be a great experience. Man, we were going to go camping. We had this little RV, and there were like 5 kids that were going with us, maybe 6. I don't remember, but I had a lot of hopes and dreams for that week. And the first night it poured down rain. Anyway, we were putting tents up. And then I discovered, well, the kids might be having a good time, but the only thing I'm doing is cooking breakfast and cleaning it up, and then it's time to get ready for lunch and clean it up, and it's time to get ready for dinner and clean. And it was hot. And then we got lost, and I'm thinking, we should have just stayed home. Sometimes we get stuck in that place. At the end of the day, the vacation turned out great, but there are points where we think, it would have just been better to turn around and go home. And, for them, Pharaoh was cruel. He was mean. And their work was hard. And the beatings would come, but at least they think, we're not going to die in this God-forsaken desert. I know what happens in that place. And I'd rather settle for the pain of the past than walk through to a future that I can't alone define. It is so much easier to live with what I got and what I know than it is to think about something new and different and have to go through all the emotions and the hard stuff of having to traverse new waters. Maybe you're different than me, but there have been times when I've spent far too much time wishing I could go back to something more familiar. I've stood with a vast sea in front of me and wished I could go back and turn around. And sometimes in a Red Sea moment, I'm tempted to choose what's comfortable, even if it isn't necessarily best. Why? Because I know what that looks like. But I don't know what the uncomfortable is going to look like. Mostly because I know that way ahead, it's tough, it's scary, and that I'm going to have to spend some time in the wilderness. Anybody remember how long the Israelites spent in the wilderness? 40 years. They were there for 40 years. And sometimes the truth of the matter is, before we get to the promised land, we're generally going to spend some time in the wilderness of not knowing. And we're not going to like that any more than the Israelites did. So sometimes when it's easy to become somewhat bitter or angry and whine and complain and question God, and all of those things are normal. Anybody out there never complained to God? I didn't think so. Anybody out there never questioned God? I mean, there's people all through the Bible that question God. I got questions when I go to heaven, I got to tell you. But when you think about this story, the Israelites are beginning to wonder whether they should have trusted God at all. I mean, we trusted God, and what did we get? They'd stepped out in faith, and so far it only seemed to be leading them to disaster, and the promised land didn't appear to be anywhere in sight, and the truth is that happens. Sometimes when we step out in faith, things seem to go wrong, or sometimes we say from bad to worse. And we begin to question our faith, or did I hear God right? Or we question God and those that God has placed before us to lead us forward. We wonder whether it may have been better to have continued the way we'd been going. At least we knew what we could expect there. But the fact is this, God did not call the people out to the shore of the Red Sea just to let them die. Instead, God had something great planned for them, a future better than they could ever imagine. God did not call them away from where they were to let them be destroyed. So the text tells us that when we encounter that Red Sea moment, we can't just stand there wringing our hands as if there's no God. There's always a Red Sea road forward if we will hang in there and trust God. So Moses tells the people, don't be afraid, stand your ground, because after today, you're never going to face these Egyptians again. The Lord will fight for you. You just keep still. I love that. You just keep still. And then we enter into a few words that were similar to last week's words when he tells the Israelites, he says, you know what, just get moving. Just get moving. And the truth is, when the waters look deep and too difficult to cross, we've got to put one foot in front of the other and start walking into the waters and take one step forward at a time. God isn't asking us to go swimming. God is saying just take one step toward a future that's something different than what you have. And when we do, God makes a way where there seems to be no way. You see, when the Israelites stepped forward despite the obstacles and the fear before them, God created the Red Sea road that would carry them into the future, split the waters. Told Moses, stretch out your hand, and the Lord pushed the sea back, a strong wall against the east, and all of that, and then turning the sea into dry land. The waters were literally split in two, and the Israelites walked into the sea on dry ground. They were protected on both sides. And then at daybreak, the sea returned to its normal depth, and the waters covered up all Pharaoh's chariots and the cavalry and Pharaoh's entire army that followed them into the sea. We're told not one of them remained. So the story reminds us that when we encounter a Red Sea moment, God creates a Red Sea road to carry us through to the other side and will always be with us. Many have seas to cross. Some are crossing that sea of unemployment. Some are crossing the sea of financial distress. Some are crossing the sea of a new job full of unexpected changes and responsibilities. We have a lot of pastors right now that are crossing the sea of having to make a move. Students are staring at the Red Sea of 1 year ending and a new beginning. Some are graduating and they're staring at a sea of college or finding a career or not knowing what I'm going to do at all. Many are standing at the sea of retirement, wondering if they're going to make it through financially as circumstances shift around them. I had a couple friends retire this year at conference. And I asked one of them, I said, so what's next? And they said, I don't know. It was just ready for me to retire, but I'm at a crossroad. So I'm just going to wait and see what God will do. And then I'm going to step into it. What an answer. I don't know that I could do that without a plan. But he did. You see, some are trying to cross the sea of serious illness, sadness, fear, exhaustion, pain, maybe even disability. Others are trying to cross the sea of lost relationships or feelings of regret, uncertainty, and self-doubt. Others are trying to cross the sea of grief. And maybe you're looking at the sea of a new relationship with hope and anxiety. There's a lot of seas out there we got to cross. You know, even in our church, there's a sea of uncertainty. It doesn't matter where we're standing at the sea or trying to cross it. What we've got to know is this: no matter what our Red Sea moment looks like, no matter how vast and deep the waters appear, through all these crossings, the Lord promises to guide us, to be with us, to part those waters for us, creating a new road so that we can journey on. Folks, we may not see the road, but God promises that he will walk with us. It doesn't matter who you are. There's always going to be from time to time rough waters and uncharted seas, and a time where there be something that can stand in our way of reaching the destination that God has planned for us. But the question is that the Israelites faced and we face is this: will you move forward, or will you stay frozen as you face the sea and fall prey to difficult circumstances and all the fear that goes along with them? Will you trust God or take your chances with Pharaoh? Just as God told the people of Israelites to get going and go forward, God is telling us that no matter what your Red Sea road is, just get going and go forward. And notice, had the people of Israel not gone forward, they would have perished at the hands of the Egyptian army. When we refuse to move forward, we will perish where we are at. I believe when we face the Red Sea road and it's blocking our way, that if we keep moving forward and dare to set foot in it, we will find that God's making a road for us where there had been no road. So wherever you find yourself today, whether you're feeling stuck or excited about what's ahead, I believe that God is making a way and parting the water and creating a Red Sea road for you right now. I believe that no matter what we've gone through and no matter what fears we carry about moving forward, God is going to lead us to the promised land that is intended for us if we just trust God to do so. I believe God takes what is broken and opens up a Red Sea road for us even when we can't see the way forward or imagine a life different than the one that stands in front of us. It's precisely times like these, when everything seems hopeless and impossible, that God parts the waters and creates a way toward a new and a better future, that God makes things new and possible for us. And that's what the Israelites learned that day. The people were in awe of the Lord and believed in the Lord and his servant Moses. You see, they saw the awe and presence of God in retrospect after they stepped forward. And because they stepped forward and dared to put their toes in the water, they saw and they encountered this awesome power of God to bring new life out of what seemed to be the end of their lives. We just have to have the courage to look ahead of us and keep moving forward, knowing that God is with us when we do. When we face sea crossings in our personal lives, it's important to put our trust in the same thing the Israelites did, the power and the presence of God. And it's important, even if we can only stick one toe in the water, to stick a toe in. And then maybe a few more. And then maybe the ball of our foot until we finally get up to our ankles and we really get wet. Because if we try to cross the Red Seas of life on our own, and we put too much faith in our own power and might, cleverness, ingenuity, creative, whatever it is we think we're going to drown just like Pharaoh and all his chariots. So today we're being invited and encouraged to look ahead, widen our view, put our faith and trust in God, and imagine the new and beautiful future God has planned for us, because God has a future plan for each and every one of us. And when we do, we will eventually cross over onto dry land and find something that is still good, still worth living for, still worth sacrificing to achieve. So as you go forward, go knowing that God promises to be present and with you, and that you can count on God's presence, power, and steadfast love to carry you through when you're encamped along a Red Sea, or having that Red Sea moment, as fearful and terrifying as it may be, because the Lord promises to bring us through the waters of chaos and danger and to see us safely to the other side. As we go to communion,